Welcome to another edition of the Islander Podcast. I'm your host, Lenny Tiller. Joining me this evening is our other host, Ernest Snooks. Ernest, how are you, buddy?
I'm pretty good, man. Living up life on the best coast, the West Coast here in Newfoundland.
Amen, brother. I may be on the west coast of Canada, but I do agree with your statements. So it's been a fun week.
Yeah.
Not as fun as last week, of course, but a great opinion poll. An opinion article, I guess I should say, not an opinion poll, but a great opinion article in the Telegram this week. You wanna talk about it?
Yeah, they somebody came out with a discussion about how one should actually cut programs that don't match the Newfoundland Labrador job market. And it was written by a Maria McMaster in St. John's. And I mean, it makes a lot of sense because, I mean, as we all know, or at least those who pay attention to it, MUN is in a really bad budget state. And I mean, Memorial University, like the facilities themselves, are awful. Like, they need a significant amount of maintenance. And they're really not retaining students. I mean, they're really not retaining people on the island either. You know, people get their degree and then they go away because, you know, they can't get a job in generally most of their subjects. I mean, there's not really a demand for like studying Greek or Spanish here. I mean,
no, I would tend to agree with you.
I mean, like I'll go over this part of the article. I mean, for example, the university offers programs in German, Spanish, Russian, ancient languages, classics, ancient worlds, humanities, gender studies, sociology, and fine arts. While some may argue that these degrees can be used as stepping stones for gaining professional degrees, the fact still stands that none of these programs can be turned into local employment by themselves. I believe the university is pushing students towards these courses just for the purpose of boosting enrollment in fleeting programs. I also believe that university leadership clearly understands that the university is funding many programs which are not useful for gaining local employment. And I mean, that's 100% true. And I mean, some people might get after me for saying this, but I mean, gender studies is, in my opinion, not that important because we've already seen, you know, enough of Me Too. And we've seen a lot of the Me Too movement. We've seen, you know, the rise of women in, you know, different roles. And compared to women in other countries that I've been to, our women are, you know, they're pretty good. I mean, it's not perfect when we can agree. Nothing is really perfect. And there's still a road to go. But I mean, gender studies is honestly, I think, it's not a useful program for a university nowadays because it distracts away from, you know, programs that could be more beneficial. Because I mean, really, what company, what small business is looking for a gender studies major? There's really not that many. I mean, unless you're going into a certain government department or something like that, it's useless, and it's just as useless as ancient languages. I mean, unless somewhere in St. John's looking for someone who can write in Babylonian cuneiform, you know, you're pretty much taking 20 or 30 grand and throwing it down the drain. And I mean, it's just all you can do about it. So I mean, we do need to look towards, you know, increasing like what programs that would benefit here. I mean, medicine could definitely be expanded. We should have a law program here in Newfoundland, I think, because I mean, the crime rate is increasing, and by God, we need more lawyers. Mm-hmm. There could be much more economic programs, you know, to train that future cadre of Newfoundland politicians in the correct way to handle an economy, because no one seems to have taught any of our politicians anything about economics. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's just a major waste of money. I mean, I'd be terrified to know how much. I mean, you think about it, a professor per each of these programs generally makes over $100,000. So I mean, you've got probably end of these programs, that's $1 million there, not including benefits.
No, that's definitely fair play. There's a lot of courses here, like you mentioned, that seem to be pretty redundant for the small island of Newfoundland. Now, I don't know if these are programs that were put in during the boom times when Mon was still fresh and exciting, or if this is just a draw for international students. But then again, if it is a draw for international students, we already know, yes, they have the lowest tuition, but they are treated a little unfair in Newfoundland in terms of how much they pay. But they still come here for the tuition cost. So I'm not really sure why those programs were left in there. I'm assuming that's the only reason. It seems to me that both the university and the College of North Atlantic, the succession planning has been very, what's the right word? Non-existent, I guess, and in recent years to figure out how to adapt to today's economy.
Oh, most definitely. And I feel that, what am I trying to say here? No, they definitely haven't adapted to it. I mean, like, we shouldn't be aiming for, we need to boost our enrollment numbers. I mean, we should have quality over quantity. I mean, that's more important for me because, I mean, if you can streamline your university's programs, you can not only make it affordable, but you can make it like you can improve the quality, improve the efficiency in which you deliver your services, and maintain your buildings properly. Because, I mean, it's fine and dandy. You can have, 20,000 students, but I mean, if your expenses are still pacing, your income, it doesn't matter how many students you have. I mean, and you can only, I mean, when are you going to not have, I mean, how many students are you going to get if one of the buildings falls down? I mean, so, I mean, unless they want to have, I don't know, gender studies in the park, which would probably cause a lot of triggering because, all that patriarchy out and about. But, I'm just kidding. I trigger warning. I may be offensive.
Do you think reducing some of these programs will stop? I mean, I try not to get on the student movement piece too much because there's a bit of a conflict there as a student. And I feel that we, as a student, I mean, money is money, of course.
Indeed.
But as you reduce some of these programs, can you reduce tuition of other programs when they're more feasible to what you're doing? So right now, if you had a teacher in every one of those programs, you're looking at about 7 different teachers for courses that might enroll 4 to 5 people. So probably not even covering the seat. You know what I mean? And so if we get rid of these programs and bring in more relative programs, you probably at the end of the day can reduce tuition costs.
Oh, more than likely you can. And I mean, that's what we're going to need to do. But the thing is about this is that right now, like I said, it comes down to that streamlining. I mean, and the other problem is you don't want to do what the College of North Atlantic has done, which is, have these programs and just constantly, quickly pump out students, like a bunches of students who have done the same program. I mean, for example, I did non-destructive testing, and I went out of a class of, it was a 1-year course, but I mean, it was still, you had a class size of about 60 or 70. So I mean, that non-destructive testing is a very limited field. So I mean, the competition, I mean, that's just my school. I mean, there's other schools in the country who probably pump out, another 70 or 80 a year as well. So I mean, you compare that, and the competition goes through the roof, and you've got probably, out of those 60, you probably got 30 who don't go into the field.
No,
so, I mean, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I was just going to say, MUN should want to avoid to do that as well, because, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, all this having all this quantity, having your numbers up is fine and dandy, but I mean, it does diminish the programming, because you're going to want to make it easy for these students to get in and get out. Well, because I mean, you still want them to keep paying you. I mean, at the end of the day, MUN and a lot of universities now are essentially, they just care about the money. They don't really care about the quality of the education you're getting, because if they did, half the stuff they're teaching probably wouldn't be in circulation, because I've seen a lot of university programs and lectures, and I would not want to be a student now. And that's one of the reasons I have not gone to university, because of for the main reason, the ideological direction of a lot of it. I mean, it's a university has become a rather, how should I say it, intolerant institution for people of my political persuasions, being relatively conservative. But I mean, that's neither here nor there about this conversation about MUN. The only thing I'm going to say is that this article by Maria McMaster is completely right, and MUN needs to focus on Newfoundland, because the main thing, and this is what the provincial government should be saying to them too, we need you to focus on Newfoundlanders. We need you to focus on either attracting and retaining talent to this province through training, or, that's actually not essentially is that. It is essentially, we need to attract and retain talent here. Nothing else matters. I really don't care if Jimmy wants to get a degree in ancient languages or ancient worlds, or I don't know, alien gardening. It's not my issue. My issue is, how is alien gardening going to benefit Newfoundland? It's not okay. Cut. But the main thing I feel, and this is essential for Newfoundland, the medical section, like the medical school, has to be expanded, and there has to be a focus on rural medicine, because that's one thing that, as you know, Lenny, living in like on the West Coast, there's doctors in Stephenville, and even then there's not too many, but there's really none out on the peninsula. There's really none out in the rural towns. And when, our parents and grandparents were young, there was a doctor in every town.
Mm-hmm.
And every village, or there was one very close. Now, everything has been decentralized. Everything has been centralized to the hospitals and to, approved government clinics. And that's the issue. For heaven's sakes, the nursing program at Grenfell is shrinking. They've had to close down the nurses' dorms because they can't get enough people to stay there. That's also because of the fees, partly, but it's because, we don't promote it, because the provincial government has too many. Right now, they think they have too many nurses. In reality, we don't have enough, but, that's not a decision we can make. But, there needs to be, within these programs, that rural Newfoundland focus, because that's where we need to start sending people. We have enough people in St. John's. We have enough people in Corner Brook and Mount Pearl and, heck, Portugal Cove, St. Phillips, of all places. And on the Avalon, I should say. The Avalon has enough. It's time to spread the wealth and have more focus on things that can benefit rural Newfoundland, that will attract people there and make them stay long term, that aren't primary resource based, that aren't fisheries, that isn't logging, because those industries are dead. I hate to say that, and people can say, no, the fishery is still got some life in it. No, it's as long as we are under the control of the federal government in terms of our fisheries, we're dead. But that's another conversation for another day.
No, I'm very much inclined to agree with you. And I know I said earlier about succession planning in recent years at both MUN and CNA. I don't remember what it was called, but in May, I went to some type of forum at the college. Now, this was done province-wide, and it's all based on Dr. Radford as the president now. I think his name is William Radford, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe it is.
His plan for CNA now is to make it more relevant, which is basically, I think, where this article kind of started. So he's looking at things of what makes us competitive again, because I think CNA has lost some of its credibility. Still very credible anywhere you go in Canada. If you say I studied at the College of the North Atlantic, they still
So
think
did
you're
I.
a
Yeah.
good worker. You
Oh
still
yeah.
hold some weight. The same with MUN. It's not as good as it used to be, and if we don't do something, well, obviously it's going to decline even more. But kind of what he's saying is, where do we focus our school in relative to the province? So we talk about courses in, say, aquaponics and farming and the resource side. We talk about courses such as nursing or mental health and addictions, which is becoming a huge, huge problem nationwide. So I think you're absolutely right. There's the same direction one needs to go in the medical field. I think you can add social work and counselors to that field as well, and probably farming and resource, because we are a province, as you know, we get 2 winter storms a week in the wintertime, if not more sometimes.
Yep.
And you look at those shelves at the supermarket, you can't get a fresh bit of produce anywhere from Steve Mill to Cornbrook, and probably not even to Deer Lake. You're stuck.
Yep, it's 100% true. I mean, it's stunning. And I mean, MUN needs to, and Cohen. I mean, CNA definitely has to change, because I mean, whatever they're doing now is not working, and they need to look at that writing on the wall before it's too late. And so hopefully they will. But I mean, the worst thing is like I said, it all comes down to keeping it not St. John centric, which unfortunately CNA is doing. They are moving, all the good. Like, I mean, CNA has an amazingly beautiful campus in St. John's, and it looks like what you would envision a college headquarters to be. It's a big, beautiful, modern building, and I hate to talk bad about ours here, Lenny, but ours is literally a former military barrack. It's essentially pilot apartments. So, I mean, that's not going to. I mean, it comes down to the direction that the college wants to go in, and it looks like, they're slowly but surely saying, "Look, we love Stephenville. We're waving our Stephenville flag, but we're going to spend more time in St. John's." And I mean, if he really wants to revamp the college, he's got to live in Stephenville. He can't be out in
step
St.
one
John's.
for sure.
No, I mean, that should be the requirement. I mean, the president, the headquarters of the campus is in Stephenville, and he should not be, living in St. John's and then flying out to Stephenville on a whim. I mean, it costs a significant amount of money. Because I mean, those plane tickets. I mean, that's easily around nearly $1,000 a trip, round trip. And then, I mean, he's probably doing that on a weekly or monthly basis. So I mean, that's a lot. I'd like to know his travel expenses, because I mean, I imagine they're high. And I mean, he should be, if the job is in Stephenville, you should move to Stephenville. There shouldn't be, well, I know you work here. Let's get you on over. Let's get you flying and fly out. No, it doesn't work like that.
Absolutely. I mean, when I was leading student council this year, we had meetings in St. John's in the dead of winter, and I looked at a flight for basically just to fly there on a Friday, come back on a Sunday. I was looking at almost $1,000 student fees. I mean, our public purse and the student council comes directly from our students. I can't justify sending myself to St. John's for $1,000 for a 2-day meeting. So I got in a car and went.
You really can't.
No, because if I take my car, you're looking at maybe what, $150, $200 in gas in the winter, maybe. And even if you have to throw yourself in a hotel for a night outside of those meetings due to bad climate, then you're only looking at $99 or $100, not $99 or $100, whatever, right? So you're still saving upwards of $500. But we send this guy wherever he lives, and I believe it is St. John's, to Stephenville to stay in a dorm room apartment that's been specially made for contract work. So if we wanted to send someone in to teach something specialized, like a suicide prevention training or other skill-related training involved in the trades, that's what that was for. And now we don't have that room, so now we're forced to put that person in wholesale, which makes zero sense.
No, yeah, it does. And I mean, like, what he's doing is, I mean, he's talking about, revamping and all this. And he's just saying, he's just sticking to the same old, same old. I mean, he's just paying us lip service, nothing else. And I mean, we don't need talk. I mean, we get enough of that. We pay this guy a significant amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got to start doing, he's got to start earning some effort for that money. And part of that effort is, as much as he probably will gnash his teeth and dread it, it's living in Stephenville, my buddy. And if you don't like it, well, say goodbye to George Street and say hello to the Brown Derby.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, a working class citizen in Stephenville can live a pretty good life. Yes, there's not a whole lot to be at most times, but if you get involved, there's plenty. And I think
but also if you make, as much money as the president of the College of North Atlantic is making, I'm pretty sure you can afford a flight.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you can afford a plane ticket somewhere. It's not going to break your bank.
No.
So, at the end of the day, I honestly have not that much sympathy for them. In terms of, like, they're saying, like, this is not somewhere that, it's not fair that I have to move to Stephenville. Well, it's not fair that we have to pay you, $180,000, Peter. So.
No, absolutely. And it was one thing that that we fought strongly for last year was this guy stays on campus, but we have students that pay to stay in rundown dormitories. I mean, some of the worst that you're going to see. I mean, some of them look like they're right out of 1950. So it's hard to justify paying this guy so much money, then putting him up in an apartment, which is in the school, and never being able to see him. He doesn't live here. It's just one of those things because you're wasting so much money on this guy, and you forgot that a college is ultimately about student life. It's ultimately about the student and making the college run feasibly and be safe enough and secure enough for those students to go there. And I think they forgot, to be quite honest.
No, I think they did too. And I mean, this is going to partly lead to the decline in the college.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, we've already seen it. Enrollment is down
across the board. Yep.
And I mean, they're cutting programs left, right, and center. I mean, Stephenville's programs. I mean, I remember 10 years ago, this college here was booming. I mean,
all the time.
You had students from all over the world coming here. I mean, I knew them. Jamaicans, Pakistanis, Chinese, Brazilians, everything. And now, like, that college used to be teeming with life. And whenever I walk through it, you might see like 3 students hanging out in the hallway. I mean, the classrooms are generally, small and empty. There's not that much life to be seen there. I mean, I remember that place was vibrant, and now it's a ghost town. And I mean, it just gets sadder and sadder every time I see it.
And I mean, this past year, and I believe it was in May when he announced the program cuts across the island, and Stephenville lost the electrical program. Yeah. Now, rightfully so, because when the provincial government said we needed tradespeople, they didn't specify which trade. They just said tradespeople. Yeah. So everybody left high school and joined an electrician program. Now we have way too many electricians that can't find work anywhere in Canada. They're having the hardest kind of a time. But that program this year had 12 students enrolled, And as soon as they were done their final exam, they said, okay, this program is never going to be taught in Stephenville again. But yet the business program had 2 students, and business is very important. But how do you justify paying a teacher for 2 students?
No, you don't. I mean, that's why you have to find out. Like, I mean, you have to readjust and say, like, listen, why are we not attracting students to this program? Why are people not coming here? And I mean, that says right off the bat that everything is failing. And I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. And I mean, if they can have these strategic planning sessions all they want, but I mean, if they're not really addressing the root cause that these programs are not striking a tune with students, then I'm sorry, you know, this is just doomed to fail. And I mean, the college has not always been honest. Like when I went, they told me that, oh yeah, you don't even need to get your certifications. I mean, you just do the course and they'll be lining up to hire you. Like there'll be guys waiting at the college at the first like 2 weeks after you get in and like promising you a job, and no, it didn't. And even I've knew guys who got certified and couldn't find a job when they did, and you know the counselors down there were saying, oh yeah, you'll make like 100 and you'll make a lot of money. I can't remember how much it was, and I'm not gonna put words in their mouth, but they said, you know, you're gonna make good money, and all this, and then when you find out, well, you're not making any money. You're, you know, and then you go back and say, like, what the heck? And you say, well, sorry, market changed, and off you go again. I mean, it doesn't bode well for them.
No, and I'll speak to my program for a second in community studies. There was a point many years ago when the community studies program in Stephenville used to be so big they had their own association for students. So CNA would have a student council, and then they would have an association specifically for community studies because there'd be too many students. And the government decided it was a good idea to put the program in Gander and Grand Falls. And when they got kickback, they said, okay, well, we'll teach family studies in Stephenville, we'll teach criminology in Grand Falls, and we'll teach mental health and addictions in, I believe it was Gander. If not, it was similar to that order. And then what happened about 2 years later is all 3 programs started teaching the exact same material, and it became the most generalized program there was. Now you have to absolutely learn everything and cannot specialize in college. So that took enrollment from Stephenville and just spread it to 2 more places, which made absolutely no sense.
No, I mean, that's not good. I mean, that should not have happened.
No.
But it's just saying, like I said, at the end of the day, the college is on the decline. And I think we should move on, though. I mean, we've covered it enough for now, and there's no point in beating a dead horse. The other thing about lately is people talking about Her Majesty's Penitentiary, HMP, and they're saying we need to build a new one because the old one is, you know, it's parts of it are from the 1800s, and it's damp and cold and uncomfortable. And you know what? And this might be a somewhat unpopular opinion, but that really doesn't bother me. As long as the building isn't falling down, I really don't have a problem with it. Do we need another facility that is just as crappy? Yes. Because I think you shouldn't go to prison and be comfortable. I think you should go to prison and be utterly miserable. I mean, you shouldn't go there and expect yourself to have a good time. You know, you get to hang out with it's not going to be an episode of Trailer Park Boys where they get to hang out with the guys and smoke hash and work out in the yard. It should be the worst experience of your life is going to prison. It should be that bad. I mean, without you getting physically harmed on a daily basis, that you should never want to commit crime again. And honestly, HMP is doing a half decent job. So I really don't see the need to shut it down. And if we actually did, I think we should make it into a museum because it's just that old that, I mean, it would make a pretty cool museum. It's had a few famous stories in its day, but either way, it should not be shut down, and there should be another prison opened up, somewhere else, not St. John's. And I think it should be as Spartan as possible, because for all the talk that people say, I mean, if you're a criminal, I like 90% of people you talk to on the street will agree that they don't really care if you have a good time in prison or not. They don't want you to have a good time. I mean, you did something bad, and you have to pay for it. You shouldn't be getting to hang out and watch TV. I'm sorry. And if you have mental health issues, okay, yes, and we have seen people commit suicide in this prison, but that is not because the prison is because it's old or it needs replacing. It's because the services available are not sufficient to handle their needs, which is a completely different issue than the age of Her Majesty's Penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, and it's also not just the fault of the prison staff. They're trained to guard these people. They're not trained to be health counselors. As tough as that is for me to say, everyone says the guards did nothing. Well, the guards aren't trained to handle this. They're not trained psychiatrists. They're not there to help you with your issues. They're there to make sure you don't escape.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where I look
Yep.
at this from. If the conditions are that bad, I'm not thinking about the prisoners per se. I mean, they're still human. They deserve some type of quality. Should it be the best? Probably not. But I'm thinking about the men and women that put their lives on the line every day they go in there. I mean, I read one article where guards have to tuck their pants into their boots so the rats don't run up their legs. Now, I can't vouch if that's an extreme case or not, but I'm looking at the health and welfare of the worker more so than the prisoner itself. If that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does. And I mean, if that's the case, okay, there needs to be some modernization. Okay, in that case, I mean, if it is affecting the health and safety of the prisoners and the staff in a severe way, like rats, okay. It is an old building, and of course there are going to be rats generally in old stone buildings. We all know that to be true. But, like I said, at the same time, I mean, it should just be enough that you alleviate the rat problem. Maybe get a cat or two. That might help. I'm joking, but there are ways around this, and I mean, it's costly, yes, but I mean, once you eliminate the rat problem, it's generally not so bad. Now, am I saying we should be starving and freezing prisoners to death? No, but I'm just saying that if it's a bit crappy, it's because it's supposed to be. And honestly, right now, a new prison is not like a new prison to replace a decommissioned HMP is not high on my priority list. I'd be more concerned with getting a much larger Waterford up and running, because the one thing with Newfoundland lately, we have seen a rise in mental illness, or at least in the reporting of it, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
And we do need the appropriate facilities to take on people who are people might get angry for saying this, but I'm not going to back down. People who are too mentally ill to be out in the regular world amongst us, because we all know that not everyone who has a mental health problem is dangerous to the public. There are plenty of them who are. They're violent, they're aggressive, and prison, Her Majesty's Penitentiary is not the place for them. They need to be in a place where they can receive appropriate psychiatric care on a full-time basis. And the Waterford is literally an old insane asylum. So we've got to replace that one. That's a little more important to me, and we have to make it bigger, because, like I said, with the rise of these issues, we have to do something. And people might say it's a bit cruel to lock up somebody with certain mental illnesses, but I've been on the streets doing security. I can't say I'm the same as a cop, but I've seen mental illness in several forms, and I know people who have had severe mental illnesses, and who do, I should say. And while I love them to death, they shouldn't be amongst the general population, because sooner or later one of them is going to snap and somebody's going to get hurt and killed. And I mean, the perfect example actually is that woman who in St. John's, my God, I'm trying to remember her name. Her father was clerk of the executive council, like head of the pretty much the premier's chief of staff. She killed that guy with a hammer. If you remember that, I think her last name was Babcock. She should be, she's an example of someone who should be, for her own safety and for the safety of the general population, put into this facility and not be allowed out. It's cruel to say, but killing somebody with a hammer or even attacking somebody in a break, because sometimes a lot of these people don't take their medications. We can't make them. Once they're out amongst the people, there's nobody who pulls up and shoves a pill down their throat, and they're stable enough to at least basically function. And we all know if they don't take those medications, they're going to hurt somebody or themselves, and we don't want that. So I usually don't advocate for the government being like that, but in the case of severe mental health, we've got no choice. So that should be a major priority of any government coming in. We need to improve the mental health facilities here, and by improve I mean expand them, and determine, if somebody comes in or has been accused of, an assault and they have a mental illness, something like that, assess if they are dangerous to the general public, assess if they are going to take their medications or not, and then maybe in time they will be fine to return, or they may unfortunately have to be a ward of the state. I know everybody says, some people, they can't help what they're born, and that's true, but we have to look at the greater general safety here and the general functioning of society. That's the way I see it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly a topic that's near and dear to me, is mental health and addictions, as you know.
Yep.
I agree in some sense that it's very difficult sometimes to know what the right course of action is when someone does commit such a horrendous crime. Now, I have different thoughts on the prison system and what a mental rehab facility looks like than the ones we currently have, because right now
it's an insane asylum. It is a revamped insane asylum.
I agree. They went crazy living in four walls. So again, we put them back in a place with four walls. Most people do need structure in their life. That's a thing that humans need, is structure. But we also need environment. So the kind of rehab I'm big on is environmental rehab. So you don't lock somebody up necessarily in prison for 19 hours a day behind bars in a 4x4 cell. You have them out working on the land. So if that means we invent some type of farming system or ranching system where prisoners work at to help solve our food shortage problem, so be it. When they come out, that's usually where they go to work in some places, right? Because it's usually the only people to hire them as farmers. And so why not have a prison built on a ranch where they get to help them, but then they have to do hard labor every day as well?
Yeah, but then that opens up a very slippery slope. It brings on the argument that you are forcing these people into servitude. Now, do I like the idea of penance through labor? Yes, I think. That's actually a very good idea, Lenny. Making you repay your debt to society through hard work, and instead of just them, sitting around in the cell, or hanging out in the yard, getting their exercise and having a game of baseball or whatever it is they do in there. I honestly don't know, because I've never been to Her Majesty's Penitentiary, and personally I really don't want to go. Um, but these are things that maybe we should look at. And I mean, the only thing is that it does open up the human rights issue, and it is that slippery slope that we really need to ask. I mean, do we really want to take on that? Because sooner or later, somebody's going to start saying, "Hey, I don't like the idea that just because I don't know, I robbed a bank for some to get some money for get some drugs. I don't think I should be made to go out and dig holes in a field all day and maybe get hurt or pull a muscle or something like that. And then I mean they can take it up with human rights,
Mm-hmm.
the Human Rights Commission. So I mean it does open up that, and I mean that we need to have a discussion about, but there are ways around that, of course.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And I think that's the issue we ran into right now. Is right now they're claiming human rights for the shape of the prison. So if you remove them
Yep.
from the prison and you put them in kind of a space like I've mentioned,
Yep.
if they do it again, I mean, you're going to go from one extreme to the other. You're going to go from this really old building where it's cold and damp all the time to a nice structured building where you're going to have a day job, where you're going to have structure, you're going to have something to care about, you're going to have a reason to get up every day. If that becomes a human rights issue as well, then I'm not sure where that would leave us. I really don't.
I
That's
mean, well,
above my
the
pay
thing is
grade.
that there's always going to be. No, yeah, and that's true. But the thing is, there's always going to be complaints.
Well, certainly,
You're
I
never going to have
agree.
someone completely satisfied.
No.
And I mean, that just brings up the question, you know, where do we draw the line? Where does it cease to become a human right? Or where does it cease to become, just a complaint and actually becomes a human right and so forth? Um, so personally, I think if it's not absolutely abusive, or they're forced to work like 13-hour days without breaks. I think a bit of farming wouldn't be too bad for them, or a bit of logging. Well, actually, no. You know what? I don't like the idea of giving convicted criminals like chainsaws and axes. That's not a good idea, actually. Um, Maybe you should be giving them a hoe or a fishing rod or a by hoe I mean the tool.
Mm-hmm.
Just got to put that just got to put that out there. Some people might not know what a hoe is, or they might know the wrong definition. But a hoe or a rake or a shovel, or something, whatever they need to do, and heck, even woodworking, getting to work, teach them how to do woodwork, get them to revamp certain certain buildings and that, things that or certain furniture in government buildings, things like that. Have them learn the value of hard work by making furniture, quality Newfoundland made furniture, selling it off to people. I mean, it would, because I mean they're not really getting paid. Well, they might get a few, like a buck or two an hour. I mean, you can sell it at a reduced price,
Mm-hmm.
and you can promote a Newfoundland product. And people might say, the government is profiting off of prisoners, but at the same time, the government spends, I believe it's like $30,000 a month per prisoner or something like that. I've got to find the exact stats, but I mean, the amount of money the government spends per year on each prisoner is ridiculous.
It is. They still lose
So
money if they do what you propose. They still lose money.
yeah, but I mean, it's still, if the government can recoup its losses
Absolutely.
somehow, I've got no problem with it. And I mean, like, it gives them a purpose. There's one other thing that I think needs to be brought in, and some people will find this really controversial, but I believe in national service. Like, there should be mandatory military service, without having to go overseas. I think for a minimum of a year or two. I think once you get out of high school, you should be assessed to either join the military or do the police or join the police or fire services in either a regular time role or in an auxiliary position. Um, and I think that would actually increase the amount of pride that people have in their communities and in their country, because that's something that we don't have. right now. We are losing, that love that we have that makes us, Canadians and Newfoundlanders. I mean, we're moving in a direction, I guess, that is not positive, is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I think national service would address, one, the chronic manpower shortage that the Canadian militaries and the RCMP is facing, and it would also give people, a new appreciation for our service members, because you'd have to walk a mile, or in their case 5 miles in their shoes.
Mm-hmm. That's an
And
interesting statement. I'm not sure how I could do it myself personally, but that is an interesting way of fixing the problem. That's for certain.
well, I mean, it would give a lot of people purpose, because I mean, we've seen it here in Newfoundland. I mean, you see like these group of people who are physically fit, just walking around town, hands in their pockets, smokes in their mouth, staring down at the ground, hunched over, or staring into their cell phones, and they're not going to work. They're just roaming around all day, and that's all they do. They just roll around or ride on their bikes, and or drive around. They don't do anything. They don't contribute. They have no purpose in life.
No.
And what I think that would do is give them a sense of purpose. It would give them, somewhere they'd have to be. It would give them um, something they'd have to work on. And I think that would actually go somewhat of a way to getting people, like, to reducing the methadone problem, and reducing the opioid problem, because a lot of these people, I mean, when they got addicted, they were generally idle with their lives. I mean, they were just, hanging around, and nothing else to do. So let's pop some pills and have some fun. And next thing you know, you're robbing a bank. I mean, I can't say that's the correlation that everyone faces. That's not what everyone gets into. But, addiction generally does lead to a life of crime. And we see it all the time in this country. I mean, you look at our homeless Aboriginal population. They're they suffer from chronic alcoholism. I mean,
Oh,
and what happens when,
absolutely.
and I mean, and I've seen it myself. I've been attacked by homeless people with addiction issues, because they want to beat me up so that they can get arrested and spend time in a prison cell.
Yeah.
Because they have nowhere to go, and they have nothing to do, and they just can't handle it. And I mean, the
No.
addiction to alcohol plays a big role in that.
Yeah, I agree. And you seen that last week in the article that came out of St. John's, where they were trying to do I don't remember what it's called offhand, but it's a specialized type of count to try to figure out the homeless population. And that was one of the keys that were mentioned, is how many of them will commit a crime purposely just to go to prison, just because they're guaranteed housing and food for a little while. They don't want to do it, but out of their own personal safety, out of their own personal regard, they have no other choice.
No, and that's true, and that's really shocking. That I mean, and it's actually, honestly, it's sad.
Oh,
And
I
I mean,
absolutely.
like I said, and I've seen this. I've seen people, and I mean, I've had police officers when I've called them after I've nearly been, assaulted. Luckily, I've never been seriously hurt, but I mean, they've told me, like, they want to hurt you, not because they hate you, because they don't have anywhere to go, and winter's coming. And a lot of this is due to, drug, alcohol issues, mental illness, and it's crazy.
No, absolutely. The homeless thing. Oh my God, Ernest, it's so complex. And I mean, this was something I did in my second semester. And I mean, I think I showed you some of my own research that I did just in STEAM alone, and just mind
Oh, it's
blowing
it's
how just
it
how
really
insane it
is.
was. Yeah, but it's something that we definitely can't solve in a podcast. but definitely something that we don't look at very much in Newfoundland either, because it's very much hidden where we're to, isn't it?
It is. But I mean, the worst thing is that it is getting more out in the open here in Stephenville, at least. I mean, I know at least 3 or 4 different people now who, 2 years ago I never saw in my life, or never saw them like this, hustling for money, like begging for change,
Mm-hmm.
and it's terrifying to see, because I mean, and I hear it all the time. People come up to me and be like, "Look, I mean, I'm so tired of seeing so and so hanging around the parking lot of this and that place, bumming change off me." Um, Sooner or later, one of these people is going to get hurt, because somebody's going to snap. I mean, somebody who's maybe had a bad experience with um, homeless or addicted persons in larger cities, like for example Fort McMurray. I mean, the homeless there sometimes give you a very hard time, and I mean, I'm sure you've experienced it just as much as I have. And there's some people who just really don't like to be buggered for change.
No.
And sooner or later, one of these guys is going to ask him, and he's going to snap, and this fellow is going to get seriously hurt. And so, I mean, we have to address this, because I mean, he's not homeless. He's not homeless or hungry because he can't find a job or he can't get any money. I mean, welfare is enough. I mean, it's not a heck of a lot, but it is enough that he can get a half decent meal.
Yeah.
And a bit of shelter. It comes down to, he has a mental health problem, and I mean, addiction is. I mean, now it is a problem that you sometimes, not always, but sometimes do bring unto yourself. But at the end, it does become a mental illness, because I mean, genetically, you can be more susceptible to addictions and to other such vices. But it is something that we really need to address. And I mean, Stephenville's only a very small example of it, but I mean, 3 or 4 people out of our population, I mean, is still noticeable enough.
Yeah.
Because it is a relatively small community.
Yeah. So even if you have 3 people, they only have really, you talk about the 2 busiest centers in Stephenville, that's really the only 2 spots they're going to hang out, which is Walmart and the Dollarama. And that's the 2 spots where you see them the most. And it's unfortunate, because there is support in Stephenville, but getting them to know that. And to get welfare, you need to fix, well, not welfare, I didn't mean to say that, but social assistance. This sounds a little better. But to get social assistance, you need a fixed address. So if you're homeless, social assistance is not even an option, because you don't have a fixed address.
Yeah. And it's a bit shocking, I mean, but these things need to be addressed eventually. And I honestly, this is not something that's up my alley of in terms of specialty.
No.
And I mean, I do struggle on how to address it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think even the people that it is their specialty struggle to address it, because it's finding a cost-effective approach to dealing with it, but still making it effective enough to work. And unfortunately, sometimes you can't have, without the money, you can't do the latter. You know what I mean?
No, exactly, yeah. And but I mean, right now, and that's one thing Newfoundland doesn't have, is the money to provide to, help these people in these situations. So it's something I think that, I guess right now, I mean, may have to go to the wayside and it's going to get worse.
Yeah, and I think the more our economy declines and the more our heating fuels go up, the more electricity bills go up.
Which they are, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, you're going to have people that have to choose now, and that's...
And most people are going to choose with their feet.
Yeah.
They're gonna end up going, and I mean, the only ones left are the people who are, incapable of leaving, and a lot of those people are going to turn to crime.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate to think of it that way, but I think that writing is on the wall right now until we come up with a with a strong, concrete plan to be able to deal with all this stuff.
No, yeah, that's true.
But did you want to touch on the harbor money?
I should, but I mean, at the same time, I hate to say it, I'm woefully inadequate on this. I've been battling this, as you know, I've been battling a bit of an illness for the last the last week or two, and I haven't had a chance to really get into it. As embarrassed as I am, and I apologize to our faithful listeners. I've just been not in the right health to really give everything too much attention.
No, and I think that's fair. We can save that for next week, and
we definitely can.
We'll have another fun week next week of stories. Hopefully, we know in the summer it
slows down a bit, but I mean it is. But I think, you know what, it wasn't a bad episode this week. I mean, for a slow week in Newfoundland politics, I think we did pretty well.
No, I agree. And if our listeners could put in the comment section a show they would like to see us talk about, maybe it's just one topic that we can hash out for an hour, whether it's homelessness or economy or whatever. Maybe we just do a show on the state of the Newfoundland economy, and we don't talk about news of the week. We just talk about our opinions on the Newfoundland economy. That's an option for the summer as well.
Yep, that it is, my friend. That it is.
Did you want to sign us off there?
Yeah, I guess I might as well. I mean, you've always had the pleasure of doing it. But, you know, I just want to say thank you guys for tuning in, guys and gals, I should say, tuning on into this program, keeping us in mind when you watch us. We always do appreciate it. We'd love a few more comments. You know, we'd always love a bit more feedback and that and how we can make this program even better. And in the future, you know, hopefully we can provide an even more, you know, jam-packed program. So I guess from me and Lenny, I just want to say thank you guys very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.